I've had a wonderful career and I didn't leave to escape the 9 to 5. It's just the LinkedIn opportunity proved to be something far greater than I anticipated.
Welcome to the Speak as a Leader podcast, where you learn how to speak fearlessly on stage, on camera, or in person. I'm Nausheen, a leadership communications coach from the Fortune 500 world. And on Speak as a Leader, I talk to leaders from corporate giants like Google, IBM, and Amazon to startup founders, visionaries, TEDx speakers, and even leaders who've worked at the Pentagon. You will get to know how these leaders learned the art and science of speaking fearlessly on any stage. Let's get started. Ryan Musselman is a growing force on LinkedIn. You might remember him from his edit with the flaming sword of fire rallying cry. He is the second creator that I'm speaking to for my special LinkedIn influencer series, and I'm asking all of them one question. What is the difference between creating a personal brand through writing versus speaking? Ryan talks about how he integrated videos and lives into his LinkedIn content strategy, which didn't just get him likes, followers, and impressions, but also created a very strong community. So much so that he's quit his full-time job and now is a full-time content creator and a content business owner. Hearing it now from Ryan himself. Hi, Ryan. It is such an honor and a pleasure to talk to you. We've been talking a lot, and I feel like I already know you, even though we've never met in person. I think we don't even need to now that we're such good friends. And yeah, I've been really excited about having this conversation with you. So thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Oh, the honor is mine. I see Speak as a Leader all over the place, and I've always looked up to how you get really good guests on here. So to even be on here right now is a total honor for me. It's great. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. You're so kind. So let's jump straight into it. We
Sure.
are interested in knowing about your journey, especially when it comes to building your personal brand. And one of the reasons why I was really interested in talking to you is because you've almost made a transition from just focusing on writing to build your brand to adding in video, LinkedIn Lives, and bringing your presence into your personal brand. So tell me a little bit about that journey. Did you start with just writing, and when did you decide to actually invest in video and into speaking?
Yeah. When I look at my career over the past 16, 17 years and content strategy, content partnerships, I've had a real blessing to be able to see all of these different areas become more interconnected versus static, and the value of making them interconnected in terms of the opportunities it opens up, the positioning it gives to your brand, the new partnerships that come on board, the new relationships. Those things are so important. So I looked at my content strategy and said, if I ace it in copywriting, something I stumbled into, didn't even mean to get into, then what's the natural evolution of that? Well, if you do well in copywriting, then the next step up is that personal branding element. But to take them deeper in a crowded market like copywriting, you're going to have to win in video and audio, not just a newsletter, even though that's critically important. And then it's going to be more about how do you take that personal brand, you've built this leverage to monetize it, right? So how do you actually monetize it? What does that offer system start to look like? And so I'd love to have that have happened within 24 hours, but it's taken about 12 months and a nice long career pulling from Google and other large organizations and so on to kind of start to bring that strategic mind into perspective. And so that's kind of how I'm starting to look at that now. What is that next phase? So I don't outgrow my content, or my content doesn't actually outgrow me by just staying in that one lane.
I love that. And you've mentioned transitioning from the 9 to 5 world to the entrepreneurship world. And because I know a little bit of your story, I've always felt that it resonated with me because I also come from the corporate world and I became an entrepreneur. And I feel, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel that it was a bit difficult for you not like a very straightforward route to give up on the corporate world. You were still very much a 9 to 5er the first time we met, but you had already started building your brand on LinkedIn. And a lot of people didn't know that about you. And you had a period where you took a break from socials and you were still employed at that time. And then you came back, you were still employed at that time. And then you broke away. So tell me about that. Why was it difficult for you to break away and become an entrepreneur?
Yeah, there's a couple of reasons. One, I didn't have a bad career. I've had a wonderful career, and I didn't leave to escape the 9 to 5. It's just the LinkedIn opportunity proved to be something far greater than I anticipated. It's funny because prior to actually going full time into the solopreneur route, I had just joined a new organization 10 months earlier and had no intentions of quitting. I just wanted to keep growing my brand, but I kept getting pulled back into this. Well, people are asking for something. You've created demand without the intention of creating demand. Now, how do you channel that demand and capture it? Should you even do that? So I wrestled with those things, and they finally came to a front where I said, okay, I'm going to try it because I can always go back to that corporate career. I have enough headway, relationships, proven track record. But what if I did make it work for myself? And what if it enabled me to hire other people, whether it's freelancers or full-time individuals? Maybe it doesn't have to be the solopreneur route. Maybe it could be the entrepreneur route. So these questions make me motivated and curious. And I think that was a big differentiator in terms of staying or going. But you're right. It was a bit of a struggle because you're used to an existing corporate framework. Paycheck shows up on time. I live in the US, so benefits are really expensive unless you're at a corporate organization and they're fronting a lot of that. I don't have that anymore, right? So you give up some comforts in exchange for freedom and new ways to think. But it really comes down to this for me. I think about, okay, if I was in that corporate world, I'd be thinking about what am I going to say in this executive meeting on Monday? And instead of me wasting my time on that, I don't even want to say the word wasting, but instead of allocating focus to that, now I'm trying to solve dynamic problems of an offer system that I've created to help other people do the same, monetize their business, build their brand, get leverage. It's just a more dynamic challenge. And I think that's what really keeps me up at night, quite literally, to solve those problems. And that's fun. That's a bigger challenge than the other stuff I was doing.
I get that. I get so much of that. There is absolutely this great advantage to having a career, growing within a company, especially something that you don't hate. Because you're right, if you don't hate it, you have so much less incentive to leave it because it's good and it gets better. You've seen people get to the VP level, the director level, the C-suite level. I absolutely know that route, and I'm so glad that you chose to join us in the more challenging world. Right? Because it's a whole different learning experience for sure. It's doing your entire thing by yourself. So you chose to keep building your personal brand and use that as the growth engine for your company, and chose to branch out into video to diversify. Now, were you always a natural on video? Were you always confident?
I think so, even if I had to fake it sometimes. I didn't expect this. I learned it in high school, actually, that I liked to give presentations. And just like stumbling on talking about content writing and content strategy, I stumbled on that back in high school. And in this English literature class I was taking, I had created this presentation on something I think career related or so on. But in those different group settings, remember how like at university or in high school, right? You'd be in group settings and everyone would have their different roles. For some reason, I got stuck in these build the presentation roles. So I'd build the presentation, but then I'd be the one to deliver it. And so it kind of was just this thrust out of the bird's nest into the middle of all of these students looking at me and a teacher that is giving me feedback saying, hey, that was excellent. I think that's where that comes from and why I enjoy it on video. But there's also this deep conviction, and I bet you understand this more so than anyone. You just develop a deeper relationship with your audience when they can connect with you in video, when they can make eye contact with you, hear your voice, see your nonverbal cues, and that human exchange begins to take place. And even if you're just talking as we're talking right now, there's still a sense of trust and authority, and there's that human exchange element, that parasocial bond that you often see in studies on social media influencers and their audience. It develops naturally, and you don't even have to sell anything for that to happen. And I mean that in a very, like, you need to have an ethical position on that, but that's what happens. And so I think that's why video comes in, and that's why I get so excited when I think about it, and why I get so excited to be on podcasts like this.
This is another thing that we have in common, that we both liked presenting. We both liked being in the spotlight. So kind of a little bit unfortunate that we don't have any lessons right away to share about getting over stage fright or getting over that initial shyness. But I love that you leaned into it. And a lot of people who are very comfortable speaking offline don't always end up speaking online. They don't always end up doing videos or doing LinkedIn Lives. In fact, some of them get really uncomfortable when they can't see the audience in front of them in person. So the fact that you lean into it and you said, I can do it. I don't feel scared. I don't feel shy. I'm going to show this part of me. And then you got really great results. I really want you to talk about the long form video experiments that you did that I feel like only you have been brave enough to do. I certainly haven't. I still do short form because I don't know if people are going to sit and watch a 10 or a 12-minute long video. So what inspired you to not start with what everyone else was doing, but do long form video instead?
One of the things about LinkedIn that I find is all too common, and not that it's all bad, but we are in an echo chamber, especially in the content writing, copywriting side of it, right? Mm-hmm. You can go and find any post you want about how to write hooks or a profile. I'm talking about myself, right? In all of these different ways. And so the most common advice when someone transitions from written to video is keep your video short, add subtitles, don't do something too long. LinkedIn hates video. It's all negative. Not that people want to criticize, but it's all in a warning, 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 warning. And so because everyone was saying that, I said, nope, we're going to do a 14-minute video. We're going to try that out. There's not going to be any subtitles aside from what's auto-generated. I wanted to go in the opposite way of the advice. In the same way, everyone says post on Sundays because Saturdays are bad. Well, I don't post on Sundays anymore. I'm posting on Saturdays on purpose. Or share a personal story on Fridays. That's the best day for that. Okay, well, I'm going to share business advice on Fridays and a personal story on Tuesday. And so those things, that testing and learning is just going to, it's a good practice. And I'm not saying you should ignore every piece of advice, but those things do factor in to why I would make a decision about video to do more long form versus short. And I think someone like you should definitely try long form because you have that existing audience.
I love that. Thank you for the encouragement. I do want to definitely try it. And it's funny because I've done a lot of long form speaking, especially offline. But when I look at my online content, there's very few videos that I've made apart from the podcast, which are conversations. There are very few videos that I've made that go beyond the 2.5, 3-minute mark. I just have never given myself that challenge. So that's exciting. So what is some of the feedback that you've gotten, especially on your videos and on your LinkedIn Lives?
It's very similar to the feedback I get in my writing is you're good at taking complex information and distilling it into actionable steps, the stuff that's immediately actionable. Yeah. And I will agonize over a post, written or video, if it's not immediately actionable. If you can't just hit, if it doesn't ding, 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 ding right away, it drives me nuts. And so it's funny to have this conversation because when I'm recording by myself, like if I'm recording a long video, I have this tendency to want to get it done in one take. And so what should take about 5 minutes or however long the video is to make probably takes me about 4 to 5 times as long if I keep messing up. But on a live event, what's coming out is coming out. And so I feel much more comfortable in the live event portion, being able to speak to people in the moment because you have to do well there. And the fact of the matter is, you don't have to do whatever well means. You're going to say ums and ahs and all of that stuff to me.
Yeah.
I think that I'm failing if I do that. I always want my message to be absolutely crystal clear, near perfect if I can, but while staying human and relatable at the same time. So I'm striving for the moon. I think I'm just getting into the outer atmosphere sometimes, and then I get knocked back down to earth. So
I love that you mentioned that live events, instead of being more intimidating than the recorded stuff, which you can mull over and edit and redo, are actually less intimidating because of the fact that you don't have that temptation of, I can just do it again. Let me just do it again. Okay, one more time. And I know exactly what you mean because I used to be a filmmaker, and you always have that temptation of going for one more take. And I was the director, which meant that I would really sometimes put my actors through a lot of misery. And I would be like, that was good, but you can do better. Let's just try one more time. One more time.
that's so good.
So when you're doing it to yourself, then you realize, wow, this is painful. I can't go through it. But in videos, I always find this rhythm. I don't know if you can relate. And I also don't know if you batch create, because I batch create my videos and I do them between 3 to 5, 6 videos if I'm feeling really ambitious at a time in about a 2-3 hour period. And I always have this warm up where the very first video that I will do maybe 5 takes. And I know the first few takes are just throwaway. I'm not in the zone yet. I'm feeling too self-conscious, or I'm too stiff, or I'm too fake. And I really get into the swing of it by the second, third video. By the fourth and the fifth, I'm really into the zone. And then I get tired. Then there's a drop off. So it's the same in a live event, I bet, where you start off with high energy, you get into the zone. And of course, it depends on how much experience and practice you have. The ones that are pros get into the zone much faster. Others have a lot of nerves to get over in the first few minutes, and they take a little time to get into it. But then you have this plateau where you have to really sustain your energy. Keep at it and keep that high level so that people don't get bored and they don't drop off. Is that something that you were concerned about in your live events?
Yeah, it is. When you get to that 45-minute mark, you're kind of on that down run because you have the adrenaline from the initial hype of launching, and you've given presentation, you've articulated thoughts, you're making sure all of these bells and whistles are hit, there's value added. But the reason why it drops off is you realize you're done speaking or you've hit your moment, but the next presentation starts. And what I mean by that is the Q&A. We always tend to have Q&As at the end of these videos.
Yeah.
But that is not, it's not like when you're working out or you're running, right? I used to have coaches. I played a lot of soccer. We'd always have this cool down period where you just take a few laps and it's just light jogs around after an intense workout. Well, the Q&A period is not a cool down period. It's like the revamping period because everyone has been seeing your information, consuming it. Their ideas are spinning, but they've been holding them in, not expressing them by presenting. So they're bringing gusto and energy with their questions that are burning inside of them that they need answers to. So you need to get this second win. And sometimes that can be really exhausting, but to have that full 360 experience that keeps people coming back, you have to be ready to do that. And I think that's where you have this moment of like, okay, I need a jolt to get myself back on because these questions are going to be intense and they have to be sharp. Every answer to a question is a post, right? Or I think about that way. So if you're going to ask a question, I don't want to give you a dull answer. I want you to feel really good with that answer so you can go in.
That is really the gist of it. Making sure that you're motivating yourself and giving yourself that energy first throughout the session and then into the Q&A. And I never thought of it like that. You're totally right. Some people do take a pause at the Q&A and have some water, but then you have to dive right back into it because You are holding yourself up to that standard. And I often see that you always hold yourself up to a very high standard. I've seen that through your posts. I've seen that through interactions with you. So I see that perfection is very much alive and kicking all the time.
It's a double-edged sword. Sometimes it helps and sometimes it just gets in the way. And I think, going back to what you're saying about video, your first 5 takes are usually throwaways, often makes me wonder if psychologically, as we're video creators, do we have more takes, or are we more self-conscious in the video process because we know we can always go back and edit it and fix it and put the bow, the package, the wrapping on there before it's shipped? And I wonder if that actually feeds into the perfectionism that causes us to think differently about video. Video to me is really hard, but live events are very easy.
What you just said reminded me of a lot of speakers who are very experienced in going and improvising talks and presentations. So they'll have a slide deck and then they'll go and present, but they wouldn't have rehearsed in advance. And they feel comfortable in the moment. But a lot of times I've seen that they are average or slightly above average, and then their growth just plateaus. They don't venture out of their comfort zone, venture out of that improvisation zone and into something more polished and more practiced. They have a lot of barriers to it, though. They have a lot of objections like, Nausheen, I don't want to sound rehearsed. I don't want to sound like someone who doesn't know what they're talking about because they've had to memorize. I want to be natural. If any of that applies to you, I know you have very advanced speaking skills by now because you have been speaking for a while, especially on camera and live.
Yeah, my methodology is sound unrehearsed, but be airtight in the presentation. And so the airtightness in the presentation is what gives me the confidence to be a little more fluid and less rehearsed, because I know I have this jumping back point. Not that I'm using the presentation as a crutch, but I know if there's anything that I miss, that presentation is ideally airtight. And so often I will construct that presentation almost, it's like you have Iron Man and you have his suit, but you have Jarvis inside that's guiding and directing him based on his prompts and cues, or I guess we could call it Chat GPT these days, right? But it's not Chat GPT that's behind me. It's just an extension of my thoughts and my presentation that I'm delivering in front. And it's a reference point to help emphasize and enhance what I'm saying.
It's always good. It's always good to have thought about what you're going to say ahead of time, whether it's in the form of speaker notes, whether it's in the form of notes on your slides. It's always great to do that because when you're in the moment, you forget what you already know. This is documented. You are under stress. You're under duress. You're not going to have easy access to all the thoughts that you would have had access to if you were in a relaxed state of mind. This is why learning, especially very difficult forms of learning like language learning, cannot happen under stress. You cannot learn a new language if you're always under pressure. You need to be relaxed. That's when you can access all of your neural network and very easily store information in it. So when you're preparing for a talk or a presentation ahead of time, you are simply giving future you access to the thoughts that they wouldn't have had in the moment.
One of the funny things that I think is so important, this might help someone out. And I don't know if there's a psychology behind this, Nausheen, so I'd love to hear your opinion, but I spend more time on the introduction of my presentation when I'm speaking live before anything else and over anything else. Meaning, if I do that and deliver a good introductory message, build the foundation so people have it in their minds what the rest of this is going to be about, that anxiety for me, gone. And then I get more relaxed. So my recall of the key points I want to make and the very delivery of those key points now comes into crystal clear focus. And I forget less of what I wanted to draw in anecdotally, pure example, objective, social proof, whatever that is, so long as I nail that intro, golden. But if I don't nail the intro, I feel I'm starting stuck. I feel I'm starting inconsistent. And so it's always that intro for me that is so impossible. It feels like at times to get through. But when it's gotten through, man, it can be so much better. Is there anything to that maybe you could unpack for me of why that is?
It's about the beginning. You want to make a strong impact and you want to get feedback. Now, that could be in the form of audience feedback or it could be your feedback to yourself. But you want to make sure that you're on the right track from the very beginning. And this is absolutely the case for a lot of people. If they stumble in the first few seconds or the first few minutes, they lose their self-confidence. And the opposite is true as well. So I had a client who had massive stage fright. She would go blank. She wouldn't be able to find her words. And she had traumatic experiences in the past where she was on a podcast and she just forgot what she had to say. So she worked with me and then she went on a panel discussion at an in-person event. And she had worked in a joke in her intro. And she told me later that she was nervous starting out, but as soon as she got that first laugh at her joke, she immediately felt the self-confidence. She immediately felt reassured. Wow, this is awesome. And then she literally told me she felt unstoppable after that. And her confidence just climbed and built upon itself because it had that initial feedback. So it's really all about going into what could be unfamiliar territory, because no matter how many presentations you've done or how many talks, how many times you've been on camera, the next time that you're on camera, there is a little bit of you that thinks it's still unfamiliar. Something could go wrong, or I could get a question that I don't know an answer to, or something could happen where I just cannot play my slides for some reason. Something could happen, or my content just falls flat.
That little token of validation that just kind of in that moment, the second it's there, it's like a light switch. It just flips on. And then for the rest of the time, you're good. Even if you go through a bit of a section where you're stumbling over your words a little bit or you screw up what you said, no one's even hearing that. Or, I mean, they're hearing it, but they're not processing it and thinking to themselves, okay, I'm marking this down. He said, and he really broke up in that sentence. I can't trust what this guy is saying. Like, who is this guy on stage? They're not even thinking like that. I know I'm never thinking of that when someone is delivering on subject matter that I care about, even if they're doing it in a monotonous tone, or even if their ideas aren't fully fleshed out, I'm still kind of engulfed in the actual subject matter to the degree that I want to learn more, hear more, research more, and so on. Yeah. So I think we can give ourselves a little bit of a break.
You're rooting for them. The audience is rooting for you, not because they're nice people, which they are, but it's not just out of the niceness of their hearts. It's because if you do well, they would have invested their time into something fruitful and productive. They would have gotten something out of it. So from a purely selfish point of view, the audience wants you to do well. It's a win-win. I absolutely cannot finish the conversation without going into the flaming sword of fire. So you actually mentioned swords earlier, so you set the stage for us a little bit. So Ryan, where did the flaming sword of fire come from?
Have you ever watched a funnel program on the internet before? Maybe it's a health coach who is prompting you and gaslighting you to say, if you want to lose weight, don't hop on the treadmill. Don't do this diet, don't do that, right? They get you hooked. And then they take you down this 30-minute funnel video and it's good information, but it's not immediately actionable. It's just kind of one lead on to the next lead on to the next lead on. And before you know it, you've gone down this entire website of offer upon offer. And look, it's a good funnel. It's a system that works. I'm not, these are tactics that I use and other people use. But here's the thing. I just don't think you need to sell to someone like that. So I'm not condemning it. I'm not endorsing it. I understand it works. It's important. People are building businesses on it. So I took that and then I looked at other pieces of informational advice across the internet that I needed. I would be seeking advice I'd be getting a general answer where I kind of got it, but not to the point where I can immediately action it. And so editing with a flaming sword of fire is meant to be redundant on purpose and emphatical to the degree. What I mean is you don't have to say edit with a flaming sword of fire because flaming sword is already on fire. So what I'm just trying to be emphatical with is that that's exactly what you need to do to get rid of the fluff, any unnecessary marketing jargon. Just get straight to the point. Just what exactly do I need to know? What is that 20% that makes up for the 80%? What is that? And start there, and you'll build trust. And that theory's worked. I get incredible feedback, going back to what I was saying before of, hey, you're taking complex information, you're making it really easy to understand. I can go and action this. And that's where that comes from. Just a real desire to see the way that we change our communication, both in written and video and audio, to ensure that we are delivering crystal clear content that resonates in a sea of endless content. There is no shortage of option of people you can follow on LinkedIn, Twitter, Threads. There's no endless option. So to be distinct, sometimes it's not about being, when people say like, what's my distinctiveness? They try to go into this outer universe and find new life on new planets and be that person. When in reality, you can go the exact opposite way and just make something that's more complex, easier. Something that's not readily available. Whatever that contrast is, you can lean into that. And that's plenty of a differentiator. You'll build trust, authority, you'll be able to sell, you'll be able to move on. So that's where that comes from. I want things to be clear. I want them to be understood. I want you to be able to put it into action. And when the time comes for offer and positioning, you'll know that if everything you've got for me from free is good, then my paid offer should be amazing. And I put the same gusto into it to make sure it is. Thanks for listening to my long-winded TED Talk about that.
I love that. No, I really wanted to know. And, the number one thing that people tell me in sales calls is that, Nausheen, I ramble and I cannot stop myself from talking. Can you help me? I need to be more concise. So that is absolutely a challenge for people who write, people who speak, people who communicate. If you can be concise and clear, then you're golden. You're breaking down concepts, like you said, simplifying them, which takes a lot of brain power. It's very easy to speak the jargon. It's very easy to go into a 30-minute long lecture on your area of expertise. It's very difficult to distill it into 30 seconds that anyone can understand. So thank you. Thank you so much, Ryan. This was an amazing conversation, and I feel like we can talk for a very long time. So maybe we can have you back at some point. I would love to catch up. But for now, I love the messages that you shared with us, love your experiences, and wish you the absolute best of luck.
Thank you as well. This is a great podcast. I know a lot of people look up to this, and you're a great speaking coach. Everything you do is really amazing. So thanks for having me, and I look forward to a future.
Hey, you're still here. Thanks for listening all the way till the end. I'm super grateful for your support. If you liked the episode, please take a few seconds to give us 5 stars on the platform that you're listening on. It would mean the world to me, and it will help more people discover Speak as a Leader. To know more about how I help leaders speak fearlessly, just go to Nausheen.com. That's N for Nausheen and Sheen like Martin and Charlie. See you in the next episode. Till then, speak fearlessly.